I hope you all had a great Valentine's Day. Weird way to start out a Madam Web video, I know, but I say this because Valentine's Day is very special to a lot of pairs of people, or sometimes trios of people, if you're into that kind of thing. And what a lot of said people will do on Valentine's Day is they'll go out on a date, maybe to dinner or to the movies. I think Valentine's Day is such a perfect time to release a movie and make that opening day money. Plenty of movies have. Movies like Safe Haven, A Good Day to Die Hard, Nude Nuns with Big Guns, you know that one? Jumper. So maybe it's not a great idea after all. In fact, the only movie that I could find that was released with good reception on Valentine's Day was all the way back in 1991, and it was Silence of the Lambs. Real romantic Hollywood. Maybe love really is dead and eaten, and its face worn by a weird guy. I think it's time we get a real Valentine's Day movie, you know? And who better to spearhead such an important operation than the studio that made Morbius? The movie that everyone loved so much that they released it twice. Maybe don't cast Jared Leto in things anymore. That's just me though, and everyone else. As of right now, sitting here recording this, I have not yet watched Madam Web, but the trailer looks bad. Like, you cannot tell me this looks good. So far, the premise of the movie looks like it's Dakota Johnson running from this absolute monstrosity, abomination even, of a Spider-Man suit, and she can like quick save and quick load. Bet she wishes she could have done that before the 50 Shades movies. Am I right, fellas? I've never watched a movie with Dakota Johnson in it except for The Social Network. She played this character for about 20 seconds. In fact, I'm largely unfamiliar with the entire cast except for Emma Roberts and Ben from Parks and Rec. So in that way, I'm kind of going in blind. Same with the director. She did Jessica Jones, which I didn't watch, but people like that, right? So with all that said, I gotta watch it, right? I called up my boy Clayton, because of course you can't go to a movie alone on Valentine's Day. I mean, come on. And we bought our tickets. We definitely weren't taking any Lovebird seats. I wouldn't call the theater fully booked, except for the seats that were as close to the screen as humanly possible, but that goes without saying. I mean, you can't really get the full experience of Madam Web without watching it like this. What do you want? So I'm excited. This could be the best movie of all time. I can feel it. So without further ado, let's dive in to the Madam Web experience. Before I start the actual review, I just want to say that I was in no way prepared to watch Madam Web. I woke up in the morning about 6 to go disc golfing. Don't ask me why. Clayton and I had class starting at 10, and Clayton's been working nights, so needless to say, he was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, chomping at the bit even. Clayton and I went to that class, and then we headed over to the gym. We always work out after class, and you can see how hard we're working. Getting our McGrind, you know, building our McMansion. And then we went and played some more disc golf because I don't know, we didn't have anything else to do. And then by 5:30, we were back in our solar class, or as our back row would call it, Minecraft class. Actually, the guy sitting on the other side of me from Clayton was using the school computer to play Jewish games, and I'm not even gonna comment on that. After we left there, we hit up Raising Cane's because what do you even call the two of us heading out on Valentine's Day but a celebration of white meat? And then finally, at 8:45, we got to the theater. I didn't realize that I had bought like super nice seats in a big fancy room, so that was daunting. We got a much welcome what's up from Greg Marcus.
You may also remember my blanket from some of my previous welcome messages. In fact, lots of people have actually reached out and asked if they could purchase one.
I was actually so glad to see him, in fact, that I did not buy the blanket because holy crap, it's $50. After that, the movie was about to start, and it was a long day leading up to this moment. I was tired. I was really just ready to watch a good movie. So it's a good thing we're watching Madam Web, you know? Clayton's excited though, definitely very excited. The movie starts out with this mustache guy named Ezekiel Sims, and he's talking to this pregnant spider science lady. He wants her to find a spider, apparently a super rare spider that can save a lot of lives somehow. They talk for a bit, and he's like kind of trying to rush her to get the spider, and she's all like, oh, this isn't an easy feat. It's almost impossible to find this spider. I can do it, but it'll take me a while. And he's mad about that, so he leaves. He goes back to their camp. And then not 2 minutes later, there's a big ruckus and she comes running into the camp with a spider in a jar. And she's just like, I found one, I did it. Just did the impossible off camera. Anyway, it's obvious that Ezekiel Sims, the mustache man, is evil at this point. So it only makes sense that he kills everyone in camp immediately after she says this. Not her though. He doesn't seem to want to kill the pregnant woman. Now, this would be believable with most villains because you want to give them some scrap of humanity, but it doesn't make sense with him because you'll see later, the whole premise of this movie is this man wants to kill 3 teenage girls. It does not make sense that he would not just shoot this pregnant woman to get what he wants. I mean, he does. He does shoot her right in the pregnant, but it takes him a bit. The editing in this is already insane. I'm gonna do my best to limit the amount of footage that I'm putting in this video because it's all gonna be cam footage, but you're gonna have to see some of it because it is astoundingly bad. But lucky for her, some spider people show up and rescue her. Kind of. They only save her baby, but they did some good, I guess. In the next scene, we meet Cassie. It's 2003. Cassie is the baby, but she's not a baby anymore. I know that might be confusing for some of you, but just bear with me. She drives an ambulance with Ben from Parks and Rec, who is now Ben from Spider-Man. I love this character, mainly because I love Adam Scott. I mean, his writing's terrible, but he's hilarious.
Here. Let's see what your future holds for you.
You will.
You will what?
Apparently I have no future.
Cassie, do you know what this means?
What?
It means that their printer is broken. We can't eat here anymore.
Ben, they don't print the little slips of paper in the restaurant. This problem goes all the way to the top. It's Big Fortune Cookie. They're the ones to blame, and you have the audacity to stick it to the little guy, regardless of the fact that paper quality probably has nothing to do with food quality. This is why Sandman shot you. Actually, how funny would it be, though, if he was like,
all right, what does yours say?
Let me see.
Well? Ben?
It just says, we'll be shot in the chest. But he is literally one calzone reference away from just being Ben from Parks and Rec. I love this character. I don't care if you don't get it, Clayton gets it. And we cut immediately to her back in the ambulance doing the same thing that she was doing when we meet her. And she saves this guy from a flipped car, but then she falls into the water. And then she starts visioning, and a big S just floats past her. Is that going to be relevant later? Ben resuscitates her, and then she starts quick loading all over the place. That's her power, by the way. It's just quick loading. We cut to Sims. He's at like an opera or something, and he weirdly flirts with this woman before bringing her back to his apartment. Then he has this nightmare, which is horribly written and horribly acted.
Where's my spider?
But he wakes up and explains to the woman in bed with him that he had a vision that he's going to be murdered. He pillow talks exposition so much to her that she goes for a gun and tries to shoot him. Most realistic writing that you're gonna get out of this movie. He poisons her and then promises to cure her if she'll give him the password to her computer or something, which she does, and then he does not cure her.
It's a good thing you had no idea today was the day we're going to die.
Also, she's an NSA agent. I don't know. Oh, and also the vision he has is of the 3 main characters that we're about to meet. So the plot is that he wants to kill these 3 girls because they're killing him in his vision. It was at this point that I realized all of Sims' lines are dubbed over. Every line he delivered sounded really weird and loud and out of place. And it's because they're all ADR. This actor speaks English. It's his voice in the recordings.
They just felt the urge to re-record everything he said. Why? I don't know, but I would not do that if I were them.
We cut back to Cassie. She's at a gender reveal party. It's actually a gender reveal party for Peter Parker, whose name they can't say. But don't worry, it's less about Peter and more about being a Pepsi product placement. I don't know about you guys, but there's nothing like an ice-cold Pepsi after almost drowning. And at this party, we meet this guy. One second. I have a claim to fame. I got this at Old Navy. This character's never relevant again. He mattered to me. But she goes to this party, and this party sucks to watch. Cassie is being a weird little goblin,
My mother actually died in childbirth.
And then she starts time skipping, so it makes it all worse. It's like Groundhog Day if Groundhog Day was bad. Ben interrupts by saying that there's like a fire at the Pepsi building because of some industrial grade fireworks. So she puts down her Pepsi and goes to the Pepsi building, Pepsi. And at this Pepsi building, she's doing CPR on this guy. CPR, by the way, is her superpower in this movie. It's very relevant to the plot, and also she does it wrong. That is not 100 beats per minute, and she is not giving the resuscitation breaths. I know they're phasing out the resuscitation breaths, but this took place in 2003. It works though, because she suddenly realizes that the guy is awake and staring at her, and she just goes, "Oh, hi, sir. You're gonna be okay." She keeps having visions of her coworker's blood all over her hands, and then she gets worried about that coworker driving in an ambulance, and he brushes her off and then gets immediately crashed into by a semi-truck. Average semi-truck driver moment, am I right? Boo! Drive a full truck, no more of this semi-crap. Anyway, she's all torn up and tries to give him CPR, and oh look, she's got blood on her hands now, just like she visioned. She knew it, wow. Her web connects them all. Ben is really nonchalant about the whole thing, but to be fair, if I lived in a world with such bad writing, I would be too. Cassie goes to the doctor and tells her that she's having visions, to which the doctor replies, "Nah, you fine, girl." I mean, she didn't say that exactly, but you get the idea. She clearly is not fine though, because she goes home and immediately after watches The Christmas Carol. Yeah, I guess it does have the ghost of Christmas future in it, but Cassie, this is summer. It is the middle of July. I hate to keep bringing it back to Groundhog Day, but that would have been a much better movie to watch.
Hate to break things, Scrooge, but you can't change anything.
Oh, and she's talking to the movie. That's another power of hers, speaking to inanimate objects. I also have that power. In fact, I'm doing it right now. She has this really derivative scene where a pigeon hits her window and she like goes over to the window and time skips back and opens the window so the pigeon doesn't die. And it's in that way that she realizes that she can change the future, right? So we cut to her going to Grand Central Station and getting a train ticket. I don't remember why, but it doesn't matter. This is where she officially meets the three other leads of the film. They all have their particular entrance. For example, Maddie Franklin, who enters the scene by dodging police as they're running after her, keeping it classy, Sony. We meet Anya Corazon. We meet Julia Cornwall. Sorry. And as I mentioned before, Maddie Franklin. And while we're on this train, Cassie has a vision of Ezekiel Sims coming in and killing all of them. So she prevents it by bringing him off the train. Then there's this big chase scene. I want to stress how long this takes. 8 minutes. 8 minutes of watching Dakota Johnson react the same scene 4 times. And then like just running away for another 5 minutes. Anyway, they get in a cab. They steal a cab. And on the radio, they hear that Cassie is wanted for kidnapping, which actually, that makes sense. But apparently, like, they couldn't see Sims on the camera or something. So it just looked like Cassie was stealing 3 children, which again, I mean, she was. So they go to the woods, right? This is where they all get to know each other a little. She explains the situation and then get this, leaves 3 minors stranded in the woods. She's like, "I'll be back," and then just gone.
Cassie! Can I trust you?
I'm killing myself. I'm going to kill myself.
3 hours, okay? Just stay here. Don't do anything dumb. Seriously, don't do dumb things.
So she drives back to her apartment with the stolen cab, but don't worry, she pops the plates off because that's not conspicuous. She goes through her old photos, looking at pictures about Peru where her mom was when she died, and like Ezekiel Sims and stuff, and talks to her cats. You gotta find a better way to deliver exposition, man. I know I already threatened to end it all, but I'm just asking for the greater good. This is wrong on a moral level. But she reads about Sims and then finds a picture of him with her mom. And then she reads about the side effects of being bitten by one of these spiders. All exposition. Meanwhile, the girls past dump in the woods.
My parents are engaged to anywhere. My dad is working in a tournament for making plastics that pollute the ocean, and my mom is spending it all on hideous art. So I talk to them on Mondays. So who do you live with? And how housekeeper. I live with my dad and his wife and their kid. What about your mom? She's not really around.
They have this thing throughout the whole movie where Maddie sucks. She eats all of their food while they're stranded in the woods, which is cool, and then convinces them to go to a diner, so blow their cover. I don't know. Somehow Cassie knew that Sims could find them on like any camera. That's what the NSA agent had something to do with. They don't explain that. I had to figure that out. But anyway, Maddie convinces them to go out of the woods to a diner because she's hungry. She is so weird about stuff in this movie, man. She has this weird fixation with cherry pie. Doesn't have anything to do with anything, doesn't add to the plot. It's just, she's adamant. And then she's like, let's dance on the table that these group of boys are sitting at. I'm sorry, I didn't know that was something that a normal person would do in public. You know what would happen if I started dancing on a table of a group of strangers? You know what they'd tell me? Get down. And good on them. To be fair though, I'm not Sydney Sweeney, but it's a good thing that I would be told to get down because then maybe Ezekiel Sims wouldn't find me with his omniscient NSA cam system. Cause why not, you know? And it's an especially good thing because in the real world, Dakota Johnson wouldn't be able to just know where I am magically at some random woods diner, like she can in this movie apparently. And she especially couldn't use her quick saving powers to drive a car through the glass doors of the diner and hit the guy attacking me. What is this movie? That's another power she has, by the way, vehicular homicide. Either she predicts it or she does it, and it will come up later. But before they get away, Sims grabs her arm and stings her, I guess. But they do get away. And then his assistant is like, the lady helping them is named Cassie Webb. And he's like, that's impossible. I knew a Webb in Peru. Ezekiel, Webb is such a common name that the last Spider-Man movie by this studio was directed by a man named Mark Webb. Webb is the 152nd most common name in the United States. Your name, even, is number 270, and that was enough to have 5 games named after you. You can't just jump to conclusions like this. They all get a room at a motel, which I guess doesn't have cameras, so the assistant lady can't find them. I shouldn't be questioning this movie. It was about this point that I had to go to the bathroom. Usually I just hold the 5-gallon drum of Diet Coke in, but I just couldn't make myself do it this go around for some reason. Stepping out of the movie theater felt less like an escape and more like a mockery of my torment. Looking in that mirror, I saw only the face of a man who knew he was doomed to go back. Her web binds us all, and I was bound to return to the theater from whence I came. The rich man longs from the depths of Hades for Lazarus to come and cool his tongue, but the fleeting respite only whets a futile desire for an escape from his torment and tormentors. With or without me, the wheels continue to spin, the reel continues to turn, and hell follows with it. So yeah, when I came back, Clayton said that Cassie had a vision or something about the poison, and apparently she found out that it'll stop your heart. So what does she do about this? What do you think she does? She teaches all the kids CPR. That's right, she teaches them wrong, of course, but she does teach them. Cut her some slack, you know, she's just a paramedic. Also, I didn't think CPR would be that useful against poison. You might be able to do the smallest amount of good, but it's not like the effects of poison go away once you turn the heart on and off. Or maybe it does. Maybe it does. You know, maybe I'm crazy. I'm not crazy, you're crazy. So she talks to Ben, right? She wants Ben to come watch these 3 girls, these 3 strangers, and then she leaves, right? She leaves to Peru. Now, you may remember this takes place in 2003, and she's wanted by the law. You might remember that also. Now, you may also remember that a certain event took place a little bit before 2003 that may have made it hard for a fugitive to leave the United States. But what do I know? You know, maybe she drove to Peru. Maybe she drove to Peru in 2003. She screws around in the forest for a while and then she has a vision, right? Because that's what her character only does. That's all she can do. That and CPR and vehicular manslaughter. And she meets this weird guy with the vibe of every Ben Kingsley character. And then he brings her into a cave, which is the cave that her mom died in, because that's appropriate. What's really funny is that she's known him for all of 2 minutes, and he gives her this line.
Do you trust me?
Why would you trust you, you know? Why even ask that? And then he demonstrates how trustworthy he is by shoving her into the water that her mom died in. Hey, I'm so sorry to hear that your mother was murdered. Oh, thank you. It's been hard. Do I know you? Oh, that doesn't matter. What matters is, do you trust me? What? No, we just met. But apparently this water was magical or something, because she sees like a whole flashback of her mom's motivation for going to Peru in the late stages of her pregnancy. It turns out that Cassie had some neuromuscular disease that was going to ruin her life, I guess. Now, if you found out you had a neuromuscular disease, you may think to yourself,
But I don't have a neuromuscular disorder.
but I doubt you'd say that out loud, just like that. And it's through this that she realizes that her mother actually did care about her, and that's why she went to Peru.
I always thought my mom didn't care about me.
Which is such an insane thing to put in the script. I don't need to elaborate on that. All this is supposed to be her big awakening, though, and then the guy explains how to use her powers to be in like multiple places at once or something, and then he says the great power line wrong.
And when you take on the responsibility, great power will come.
So we cut back to the girls and Ben, and they're just generally being the worst when Emma Roberts or Mary Parker's water breaks. You might remember that Ben is a paramedic, which is impressive because he does not remember that. He seems to have actually no idea what to do. So he decides to drive her to the hospital finally, which is what you should do. And then on that drive, the assistant to Sims picks him up on the cameras or something. Now, Cassie is magically back in the States after 9/11, and she goes back to the house where they were staying, and oh no, they're not there, but she knows where they will be. Visions, you know. So anyway, she steals an ambulance, but through her premonition, she knows exactly where Sims will be, and because she knows where he'll be, she knows that she can drive an ambulance through a building to hit him. How? You're writing the same thing. Why is this guy's weakness cars? Isn't he supposed to be like a Spider-Man? Doesn't he have like spider sense? Can't Spider-Man catch cars? I feel like I did that 1,000,000 times in the Spider-Man PS4 game. Too many times, actually. I feel like he could at least do one. I'm sorry, I can't keep recounting this action scene blow by blow. I'm not in a good place to do that. So I'm gonna list the things that made me mad. At one point, Sims lands on top of the ambulance, so they use the AED to electrify the cab and blow him off. How powerful is that AED? Whose heart are you jumping with that? It's so powerful that it ruins the ambulance. This AED could raise someone 10 years dead. They go back to the Pepsi building, and the industrial fireworks are relevant again, because they try to use them to like blow up Sims. One of those fireworks hits a brick wall and explodes a person-sized hole into the brick wall. A brick wall. And these same fireworks, Cassie at one point blocks with like a scrap of aluminum. I guess that may as well happen, you know? Fine. At one point, Sims puts the three girls in a dangerous situation, kind of like when Green Goblin held Gwen Stacy and the school bus. But he has them all in like a dangerous predicament, and then he looks at Cassie and goes, "You can't save all three." And then she does, you know, she just does it. Didn't see that one coming, did you? Because he said she couldn't, but she could, she did. Then like they're both on a scaffold, and she lures them to where the P from the Pepsi sign. Remember Pepsi? This is a movie about Pepsi. Where the P from the Pepsi sign falls on him and kills him. Not the S from the Pepsi sign. You know, the S from the beginning of the movie? No, that just falls next to her. Not important to the plot whatsoever. We just got to see that. It was a little sneak peek at nothing. Anyhow, she falls, like once the letters fall on the scaffold, it breaks the scaffold, and she falls. And naturally, that stops her heart. You know how falling does? And Julia, Sydney Sweeney's character, has to restart it with CPR. Again, done wrong. Again, heart doesn't stop from poison, mind you. Falling. And it works. The poison doesn't come up again either. So I guess I was right about the whole rebooting your heart thing. It just resets your poison meter. So she goes to the hospital. She isn't wanted anymore for some reason. Even though as far as anyone else is concerned, she is still responsible for all of those things. Plus, she's responsible for an explosion at the Pepsi factory, the death of some guy in spandex, the previous 3 counts of kidnapping minors, 2 counts of grand theft auto, one of which being a first responder's vehicle that was actively being used, at least 2 more counts of like massive property damage with a vehicle, 2 counts of attempted vehicular homicide, and whatever other crimes you have to commit to leave the country during the 9/11 scare. And somehow that's all forgiven, but aw, baby Peter Parker, he's never gonna be seen again. I feel like this is gonna be one of those universes where Uncle Ben never dies and Peter's parents never die, not because it's written that way, but just because we won't get that far. Oh, and Cassie is blind now and really weird acting. I mean, she was weird acting before, but now she's like smug about it. And it ends with them all like standing in their superhero stances and their costumes and hinting at a sequel.
Clayton, what do you think? Is this the best part of the movie? Yes. The funniest thing is the theater is completely empty now. And I think cinema's over, actually.
With great power, responsibility will come.
Or is it with great responsibility, power will come?
That's what I said.
Yeah.
Now, I know I've been throwing a lot of shade at this movie, but as soon as I got out of the theater, I kind of set to thinking about the journey that I had just witnessed. The journey that these characters had gone through. Earlier, I mentioned the points in the day that had brought me to be at the theater and be watching this movie, but I couldn't help but think about all the little moments I had lived to get here. The web that I weave. Maybe this movie had taught me a valuable lesson. Every moment I have lived has amounted to this moment. After all is said and done, after the many miles I've walked and the many things I've learned, I have to say, it was not worth it. I'd like to read some of my favorite reviews of this movie. The editing in this is enough to kill a small Victorian child. This is definitely one of the Pepsi ads of all time, and that's something coming from Michael Jackson. First of all, Pepsi. The worst thing about this movie is that there's no way we can gaslight Sony twice and get them to put it back in theaters again. That is tragic. Madam Web is a groundbreaking achievement in experimental editing, experimental cinematography, experimental acting, and experimental storytelling. In my opinion, this could have been a really fun movie. I think the entire cast had the potential to have good chemistry if they were given good lines, except this guy. He's my least favorite actor now, and Jared Leto exists. You know what? No, I take that back. Jared Leto still sucks. But you can do whatever with these characters if you're actually willing to do something at all. This did almost the exact same thing that Fan Stick did, where they didn't even show most of the main characters using their powers until the very end of the movie. We kind of got to see Cassie use them throughout the movie and then vaguely at the end. But none of the other characters even got to use their powers at all except in visions and of course CPR. Here's the thing about movies like these. If you're going to make a movie that's supposed to be fun, you have to be willing to have fun. People are paying to see a superhero movie. Show us some superheroes. Let them superhero. But that's neither here nor there because that isn't what made this movie bad. It's just what made it like Fan Stick. What I'm afraid of is that this made this movie bad, or something like it. I hate to say this, but I think we've hit a point of no return. AI is here to stay, and is that a bad thing? Yeah. But that's the way it is. I'm afraid that from here on out, strike or not, we're going to have to keep an eye out for this type of thing. Because studios are going to try to pull fast ones on us like this over and over. And it's going to become harder and harder to catch with models like Sora coming out and better ones soon to follow. If you're okay with that, then I just want to ask you, what does art mean to you? When you see a movie, or you see a painting, or you hear a song, Do you just see those little images going by really fast, or do you just see paint on a canvas, or do you just hear lyrics put to a chordal progression? I'm sure you don't. When you enjoy these things, you're enjoying something beyond the surface. That story, that image, those lyrics are being presented to you by someone who has an experience not all that different from your own. A person who has their very own life and their very own hardship and their very own emotions that they draw on to craft this experience for you, for everyone. To put together something that everyone can resonate with, to reflect their life and our life in their art. It makes art so much more than entertainment. It makes it communication. It makes art sharing. If you replace the person behind this art with just a thing that only sees the end result of all of these experiences that are put together to make this art, then what do you have? If you take this art of communication and you remove the communicator, art becomes very lonely.
Don't you ever enter my life again. Do you hear me? Do you hear me?